Welcome back to Full Circle Ancestry and the next Ancestry Sidebar. This is number 11, and after the brief diversion of a genealogy-inspired trip to Kansas City, see more at the link in the show notes, I did promise to cover Vyšný Medzev marriages. And again, we'll focus on the years 1852 to 1886. Starting with the basics, how many marriages occurred per year in that time range? We can see there's quite some variation, with as few as 4 and as many as 29 weddings annually. No specific pattern or trend appears, but definitely some ups and downs with an average of just under 14 per year. Here's some information on the husbands and wives involved in those weddings. This is the marriage age distribution, with husbands in blue and wives in rose. The distribution of ages is certainly different between husbands and wives. The peak of the distribution is 24 years old for men, while it is centered around the age of 19 for the ladies. Furthermore, 50% of the husbands were aged 23 to 26, while 50% of the wives were 18 to 22 years old. I think there's no shock in this general trend of age difference between husbands and wives. But the grooms were certainly not always older than their brides. This is a distribution plot of age difference, subtracting the wife's age from the husband's, with the corresponding occurrence rate across all reported age differences. Smack in the middle, the high bar at 59 total occurrences, is a 5-year age difference, which jives with the male-female age difference comparison we just looked at. Moving out from there is a rather smooth distribution. Do keep in mind that the age difference of 0 years is right here, so although the distribution is smooth, it does demonstrate that the guys were older than the gals much more often than vice versa. Let's talk about the extreme differences. The highest age difference, 28 years, was for a 60-year-old widower marrying a 32-year-old widow. Next highest, a 27-year difference, saw a 45-year-old widower tie the knot with a 19-year-old in her first marriage. On the other side of the curve, there was an 18-year difference as a 45-year-old widow and a 27-year-old first-timer were wed. Finally, 2 rookies, wife aged 40 and a husband of 23, made for a 17-year age difference. In the category of factoids, the youngest widower to remarry was listed as 24 years old, while the youngest widow was only 19. The Latin terms celibes and viduae indicated who was single versus widowed in the marriage records. We can see that 349 of the 472 total number of weddings in this time span, very nearly 75%, involved both the husband and wife getting married for the first time. Ceremonies where both spouses were widowed happened 45 times. The number of times that a widower married a previously unmarried woman was 46 times, and the left bar shows the less frequent reverse case of a widow uniting with a man entering his first marriage. Cloaked under the harmless title of Marriages by the Month are some of the more surprising observations of this analysis. A trend caught my eye as I was looking through the records, but tabulating and graphing the numbers even more starkly illustrates the difference in the number of marriages occurring in different months. Working from left to right, we've got January through December indicated by the ordinal numbers at the bottom. Thus, the first point indicates that between 1852 and 1886, 142 of the 472 total marriages, that is 30% of all marriages, occurred in the month of January. That drops significantly in February, with fewer than half the cumulative January number. And that third point tells us that, yes, over a 35-year period, only 2 weddings were performed in the Church of St. Mary Magdalene in Vyšný Medzev in the month of March. We can see the numbers trending back up over the course of the year, and they spike up to the second highest monthly peak in November, which is still barely more than half of the January rate. And the village wrapped up every single year by having 0 weddings during December. The low numbers in December and March might be attributable to customary limitations on weddings during Christmas time and the Lenten season leading up to Easter. But the contrast is extreme, and those holiday downturns don't explain the continued relatively low numbers during the summer months. So much for June weddings. Let's take a different cut of data, which gives even more nuance to the monthly trend. Again, showing month by month, but neglecting marriage-free December. This is the average marriage age of husbands, top line, and wives, bottom line, in each of those months. This is again over that entire 35-year period. The graph thus indicates that people tended to be younger in those months where there were more marriages. There seems to have been an enjoyment, or at least a tradition, of the young folk getting married in the late autumn and early winter, excepting, of course, December. A few additional words about that big peak in March. Keep in mind that there were only 2 wedding ceremonies performed over that whole 35-year period. One of them, it so happens, involved the hitching of 2 45-year-old widowed individuals, which accounts for that spike. It's real data, but the limitation of having only 2 data points might exaggerate the significance of that spike. Our final graph for today is another month-by-month view, this one showing the percentage of mutual first marriages. For example, in January, 87% of the marriages involved spouses who were both marrying for the first time. We see a by now familiar dip through the heart of the calendar until the numbers peak again in October and November. From all of this, we see that generally when more weddings happen, younger people are those being married. To get a little geeky here, the correlation of the total number of marriages in each month to first-time marriages is extremely strong. An R-squared number of 1.0 would indicate a perfect correlation, so 0.985 is pretty doggone strong. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the Vyšný Medzev marriage records. Thanks for watching, and as always, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Full Circle Ancestry to keep up with all my future releases. Bye for now.